For any Black immigrants that are in America, my word of advice to you would be to actually research the things that Black Americans did in this country that allowed African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, Asian immigrants, Arab immigrants, the list goes on. Because without the strides and the fights and the deaths that came with being Black American and the fight that we had here, no one would be allowed in this country.
Excited to have you amazing viewer at Comfort for Life. Thanks for being here. Allow me to clarify a few things before we go further in this video. So on TikTok, there has been an ongoing conversation between African American and African from the Caribbean. Let me say Black American and African immigrants, words. So we are here witnessing the mass deportation that is happening in the US right now. And for some African immigrants, they feel like Black Americans should be in the front line defending them against the mass deportation that is happening. Their sentiment is based on the belief that Black Americans, African Americans are immigrants like them, so they should defend them because they are the next on the line, so they will be deported next, according to them. So we are going to listen the responses of Black Americans toward this.
Why are there so many migrants who feel entitled to be in this country, who come on social media emboldened enough to talk about how awful the United States immigration process is and try to justify why they decided to take matters in their own hands and walk across the Texas border, the California border, Arizona border, or fly into this country illegally? Why are there so many people all over the world who feel like they are entitled to being a part of the United States of America? And because the process may be difficult and may be time consuming and may cost significant amount of money, and they may not have those resources to go through that, they feel that it's okay for them to take matters into their own hands and enter our country by any means necessary. And I want to make one thing perfectly clear. If you are coming to this country from any place in the world for any other reason besides fleeing for your life, if you want to come to this country, you need to take a number and get in line. If you have decided to take matters into your own hands because the immigration process in the United States is too difficult and too time consuming and costs you too much money, which are all your problems. It's not my problem. It's your problem. If you decide to take matters into your own hands, you are a criminal and you deserve to be deported. Don't expect to come on social media and have me or other American citizens feel sorry for you. Because if I decide today that I want to go to Canada and I decide that Canada's immigration process is too difficult and Canada's immigration process costs too much money, so I decide that I'm just going to take matters into my hands and go by any means necessary, I deserve what's coming to me because Canada has their own immigration process, and if I want to be a part of that country, I need to follow those immigration processes. It doesn't matter if I don't have the money, if I don't have the resources, those are my problems. That's not Canada's problem. Why is it that migrants think it's okay that if they don't have the money and they don't have the resources to come to the United States and to do it the legal way, then they can just walk across the border and we're supposed to sympathize with them? I want to let you know I don't sympathize with you. If you don't have something, you don't have the resources for something, that is your problem. It is not my problem. It is your problem.
And the fact that it's still so many videos talking about Black Americans this, Black Americans that, are we not worried about being deported? We ain't worried about food stamps. It just shows that what's happening needs to happen. You feel what I'm saying? How is y'all still talking shit to us on y'all way out the door? Y'all like them drunk people that start a fight in the bar and the security got your ass in the headlock on your way out the door and you still talking shit. And you still talking shit. You feel what I'm saying? I seen the video of a Mexican dude sipping a drink talking about this is just a vacation because he just got deported back to Mexico. Why don't y'all want to be in y'all countries this bad? And y'all steady doing all of this in the public. It's only going to make it stricter and stricter and stricter. See, y'all are not understanding that y'all freedom here is given to y'all by somebody else. Something about this is just really mind blowing to y'all. And just like Shawty Blonde, that new press secretary, the one that ain't the one, the one that ain't the one. Like she said, it's a culture shock. We understand. We understand. But stop talking shit to us on y'all way out the door. You feel what I'm saying? I've seen so many comments up under my video talking about that birthright citizenship and Trump signing the executive order to get it put back on the political table. And so many people trying to guilt us into being fearful, talking about, I don't know what Black Americans are proud for. You're next. Once it's back up on the table, we're going to make sure that it's for who it was meant for all along. The problem that y'all have with these laws is that these laws help cover up lies. That's all. These laws help cover up lies that y'all are dependent on. How is your cousin getting deported? How does your cousin, his mama and his daddy, their parents, and both of their grandparents are all from a different country? And you still claiming that you're from here just because you get to hold an ID card. But your grandma don't even have a birth certificate. Y'all are still having grandparents being approved to get birth certificates. So you see, the reason why we're not fearful about any of the overturning of any of these laws is because we've been telling the truth all along.
I need someone to explain to me what's so hard about understanding that Black Americans have over 400 years of history and culture. What is so difficult in conceptualizing that? We was literally the backbone of and built a new country by force. Like, America would not be what it was and what it is today without Black Americans. 400 years of history, of culture, of families, of generations. What makes you think we're lost at all and don't have any connection to any roots? Right? And like, let's not talk about like lineages to Africa for a second, because we could talk about that all day long. We could never know where our people were from in Africa, and we would still have roots. I don't know why that's so difficult to conceptualize. And actually, you know what? There's always so much talk about Black Americans needing to be proud and have pride in our origins in Africa. And I agree. I agree with y'all. I've been to the continent, one country, Senegal, and I felt so much pride and connection. And I agree so much. I have so much connection that the rest of y'all should have pride in Black Americans too. Where's your pride in Black Americans as not being Black Americans? Our ancestors was your ancestors' cousins. They were family, baby, and they brought and cultivated an entire culture while surviving bondage, a thriving culture, mind you. A culture that we love, talking about having a lot of origins in Africa. Okay, so if we're so connected, right? Have pride in the culture that we built here. Have pride in the culture that literally is the backbone of an entire country. Not just America, but the entire Western Hemisphere. Due to forced labor, they still brought culture that thrived in North America, and the Caribbean, and Latin America, and South America. Have pride in us the same way that we should have pride in our origins elsewhere, okay? We're not lost. We have roots. We have culture. We have history.
I don't think a lot of you realize how much you sound like white Americans when you say things like this. So just because my family immigrated to the United States means that I cannot have an opinion about the United States and their election. And what's even crazier is a lot of you wielding identity politics against other Black creators. That I cannot have an opinion about this country that has wreaked havoc on the region that I'm from. Do you know how absurd it is to make the claim that a Black person who is not from the United States should not speak on the United States election is? The United States affects every single country on this globe, especially Black, resource-rich countries. God forbid a Haitian person makes their opinion known, which they have every single right to critique, seeing as how the United States completely ruined their country. And it is the biggest reason why people in Haiti have no future, no food, no hope. The United States election does not only affect Americans. Always keep in mind the US is only 5% of the world's population. But due to their imperialistic goals, they have wreaked havoc on the world. And so it doesn't matter where anyone is from. If you are someone who has been a victim of US imperialism, you have every right to speak about the US elections.
Liberalism failed in the West because of identity politics, and it's time for liberals to wake the fuck up. That shit is stupid. No one cares about your identity.
When I tell you that I really don't even have that much to add to this, I'm entirely serious. And the worst part about it is, if you say these things, the following phrases are going to be what come at you. He one of them undercover Republicans. He probably voted for Trump. I've never voted. And the reason why is because of how tribal it makes everybody. Everybody gets the smoothest of smooth brains. You stop being capable of thought, of critical thinking outside of the realms of your stupid political spectrum. It's why the elites have zero fears, bro. When I tell you that the elites are not afraid of us, bro, they're not, because we're stupid. We are so stupid, bro. Oh my goodness.
For any black immigrants that are in America, my word of advice to you would be to actually research the things that black Americans did in this country that allowed African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, Asian immigrants, Arab immigrants, the list goes on. Because without the strides and the fights and the deaths that came with being black American and the fight that we had here, no one would be allowed in this country. Over the last 2 days, I've seen 2 videos of 2 different women talking about black liberation movements in America versus those in the world, and arguing whether black liberation movements were done in isolation in America as something that came out of the squeeze and grip of white supremacy versus those that were in solidarity with America around the world. And the argument, that's not even what I'm going to talk about. There's caveats to that conversation which lend itself to the continuation of the diaspora wars that we have online. And I think it's time that we actually start trying to approach conversations about black identity, black heritage, and black history with nuance. One girl is Nigerian American, and she says this line that kind of set the tone for the whole conversation to go awry.
And I went through the American public school education system, which is why I have intimate knowledge of how African American history being taught in the US, much like American history being taught in the US, has a very specific isolationist lens.
Which you're factually not. You are a product of immigrants that emigrated to America in the 60s or 70s, because prior to the 60s, if you were black in America, you were a descendant of slaves. So to say that you, a first generation Nigerian, you cannot go online and tell black people that you know more about their history than they do. In many instances, what I find is that those descendants of immigrants who immigrated to America in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they're not aware of the actual historical context and lens that African Americans experienced life in America through. So saying that you have intimate knowledge of the African American history that lends itself to your expertise is factually wrong. Me, personally, on my mom's side of my family, my grandmother picked cotton. My great grandmother was a slave. How my uncles had to fight in the war in Vietnam, but they had no rights at home. My father and mother integrated a school. This is my father and mother. I'm not talking about some antiquated history that happened 200 years ago. And I think I'm uniquely capable of talking about this subject. I just spent the past week with my Haitian family, not my American family. And not speaking English, hearing the way that, we talk about history and hearing the way we talk about each other. Family is extremely educated on Pan-Africanism, the African movements, yada, yada, yada. Born in Haiti, grew up in America. I think I've always been raised to understand the different aspects of the diaspora. With that being said, there's also a tendency of African Americans to center ourselves in every single thing. Now, warranted, this conversation, this girl was talking about African Americans, but in the way that we speak about blackness and the way that we speak about each other, because of the grip that white supremacy has on us specifically in this country, we feel the need to bark at every conversation because we have to be heard, because continuously, even in the year 2024, we are not heard and we're not believed, and we're made to feel crazy because history doesn't teach our reality, and then America gaslights us. All I will say is, for any black immigrants that are in America, my word of advice to you would be to actually research the movements, the issues, the historical context, and the things that black Americans did in this country that allowed African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, Asian immigrants, Arab immigrants, the list goes on. Because without the strides and the fights and the deaths and all the triage that came with being black American and the fight that we had here, no one would be allowed in this country. And I think that is the greater aspect of that conversation that is being ignored and pushed aside. Because if you're going to be an immigrant in this country that is allowed to be here off the backs of the people who are still oppressed in this country, you have to acknowledge that when you're having a conversation. That's my 2 cents. Hope you guys have a blessed day.
So I've talked about how foreign people of color are jealous of the perceived privileges that Black American people have. And based on the feedback in my comments from Black American people, I would like to add some key details to that discussion. The biggest takeaway that I observed from the feedback in that video from Black American people is that foreign people of color absolutely refuse to accept and acknowledge the price that Black people had to pay to have these liberties and privileges. And it's a price that Black American people still pay today. It's a price that was paid in blood, bones, backs, muscles, joints, autonomy, freedom, etc. See, what I've observed being a foreigner myself and being raised in a foreign family, what I've observed is that foreigners are in this like silent one-way competition with Black American people as to who is oppressed more. And it's very much like oppression Olympics. Yeah, well, you have that stuff going on in your country. In my country, we have XYZ. In my country, our politicians are all corrupt. In my country, we have famines. In my country, etc., etc. It's like this routine dismissal of the price that Black Americans have to pay to be American. As so many of the commenters in that video pointed out, being Black in America has not been a cakewalk, for lack of a better phrase. It hasn't been something easy. And something else that Black American people also pointed out is that foreigners can choose to migrate to America and move to America because foreign people of color, we have autonomy, we have agency in being able to choose where we live and where we call home. For Black American people, historically, that choice was robbed from them. It was deprived from them because imperial powers traveled to the continent of Africa, kidnapped African individuals by violence and by force, trafficked them to the Americas, and then forced them into chattel slavery for hundreds of years. Like, we cannot underestimate the centuries that Black American people spent as enslaved property in the eyes of the law. Then after that chattel slavery was over, Black Americans then had to spend a subsequent, 2 centuries under Jim Crow and segregation laws still being viewed as inhumane property. Can we please remember that Black American people did not have the right to vote in elections until the 1960s? 1964 specifically. My mother was born in 1966, just for reference, and I'm a 31-year-old millennial. Thank you to all of the commenters who provided that feedback in that video, and please forgive me, the only reason I didn't include these important pieces in my discussion was just for time constraints. But yeah, foreign people of color are envious of Black Americans and absolutely, by the same token, refuse to acknowledge the price that Black Americans have had to pay to live in America, and it's a price that they still have to pay. And also refuse to acknowledge that, yes, although we come to America and experience xenophobia, we had agency and we had autonomy and the power of choice in coming to America. That was a privilege that was ultimately deprived from Black Americans. If it were up to Black Americans, they would not have come to America. Again, they were kidnapped by violent imperial powers and then forced into centuries of chattel slavery by force, by violence. All agency, all autonomy, all choice was removed from them. So of course, Black Americans are going to watch foreign people of color come here and get to live in post-Jim Crow, post-segregation America, post-chattel slavery America, and then get to claim, oh yeah, America is this great land of milk and honey, has all these wonderful opportunities that I don't have in my home country. And Black Americans, they don't take advantage of those opportunities. Because let's keep it real, with the existing anti-Blackness that, pervades every society on the planet, foreign people of color thus come to America and view Black Americans as lazy and thuggish for not taking advantage of all the opportunities that exist in America. Well, yeah, we can come to America and immigrate to America in the 90s and the early 2000s and say, yeah, there are opportunities, because we weren't subject to the centuries of oppression that Black Americans were subject to. Yes, our ancestors in our home countries were subject to it, but our ancestors didn't do anything about that oppression, which is why we had to leave our home countries. Black Americans here in America did, and that's why we have freedoms, because of Black Americans. And that's why you see so many foreign people of color feel perfectly comfortable fixing their lips and talking down on Black Americans, because I don't know if the psychology of it. Like, I've talked to my own family about this. Like, is it that you view yourself as white? Is it that you view yourself as, now that you're American, you can oppress someone else, and whom you choose to oppress is black people? Because as I've observed, foreign people of color never have this energy for the actual white systemic structures and institutions that actually oppress all of us. Foreign people of color, like I've said before, also envy the fact that black Americans protest and boycott and speak up and fight and advocate in ways that foreign people of color don't do in our own home countries, and then come here and have the audacity to speak out the side of their necks towards black Americans as if, like, what, you think you're white in this structure? You think you're white in this system? Because I can assure you, we're not. So if you are a foreign person of color living in America who emigrated here, or you're the children or grandchildren of immigrants, please understand and accept quickly that the only reason we were able to have the agency or the autonomy to even migrate to America in the first place is solely because of the work of black Americans. And black Americans living in America are American in name only. I can assure you the privileges and the liberties that we wax poetic about do not exist for most black Americans, and have not existed for black Americans for centuries.
I'm about to explain something, and it is not a dig on immigrants. It is an explanation and a clarification for Native Black Americans. I've noticed that immigrants come here and say, we don't take advantage of the opportunities. We don't take advantage of the things that we have in this country. But the issue is with that is that they are assuming we're like them. A lot of immigrants, when they come here, have a sense of desperation. They are fleeing from whatever atrocities or situations that are going on at home. Or if they're getting HB1 visa, which means, or H1B visas, I don't know which way it's spelled. They are trying to create a whole new life for themselves. So now they have a debt that's owed to their family, a debt that's owed to their people. So now there's a desperation there, but we don't feel that debt. We don't have that debt, and we don't have that desperation. Our ancestors paid our debt, and we are so grateful to them. That's why we're not ashamed. When you guys try to call us slaves, we're not ashamed. Our ancestors, we are grateful that our ancestors survived and paid the debt for us. We don't owe anybody anything back home. The only thing we owe to ourselves and our ancestors is to just keep progressing, which we have, which is why you can come here, because of our progression. Now back to my own people. You can't let people who they just assume that because we're an ethnic group and we're brown and black, that we have the same values and desperations and debts as they do. And we just don't. You will never hear them tell the non-melanated, oh, you're not taking advantage of the opportunities in America. Even if those non-melanated are middle class, lower middle class, working poor, or on welfare. They never say that to them because they are mistaking our skin tone for having the same experiences and having the same desires as they do. And we don't. We created through blood, sweat, and tears a first world nation. And we grew as a first world people with the country. We didn't escape to a first world. We built it, and we actually made it a first world through our labor, through our minds, and also through us pushing legislation to open up and evolve these Neanderthals into moral people on some level, or at least to pretend they're moral. We're not the same people. We can't identify with people who feel like because we're brown or dark skinned that we have the same desires, wants, needs. We don't. They say we don't take advantages of the opportunities, but what we need to understand is that, what do you mean? We created the opportunities. We made the opportunities. All the opportunities that everybody has from the entire world when they come here, we created that. So, of course, the creator doesn't look at things the same way the person who did not create that does. We are the founders of opportunities in America for everybody. We founded that. Some of us have taken it to the next level and have become billionaires. Some of us don't pursue money to the same degree, We pursue education. So we've had people going to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton and excellent colleges since integration in the colleges happened in the early 1900s. Some of us wanted to become pastors and clerics, and we've had pastors and clerics since forever. I don't know, centuries. Some of us wanted to become farmers, which doesn't pay much, and we have agricultural farmers. Some of us wanted to become teachers and professors, which we have. Some of us wanted to become doctors, so they created Meharry and Howard Medical School and became doctors. Some of us just wanted to stay at home and be moms, and that's what happened. Some of us didn't want to do shit, just like every other place in the whole entire world, and didn't do shit. You see, we're not the same. And no, we don't feel like we have to take advantage of these opportunities because number one, we don't have a debt. We don't owe anybody anything except for our ancestors. Number two, we created the opportunities. We know that they're there. And also too, some people are tired of getting sabotaged. Every time they grow and they create something, here comes the non-melanated sabotaging shit because they're jealous and they don't want competition. Some people get tired of that shit and just say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to love my family. I have a nice life, nice home, and I'm going to chill. So we're not the same. Stop thinking we're the same. We created a first world nation through our blood, sweat, or tears. We don't owe a debt to anybody but our ancestors, and they paid that debt. If we want to take advantage of the opportunities that we created, we will, and we do. It's not our fault that you listen to the small hat media that tells you who we are. And it's not our fault that when you first come here, a lot of you guys are placed in our lower income communities because that's the only people of us that accept you because they have the biggest hearts. So just because your environment is what it is, it doesn't mean that there aren't other people doing big shit or just making life because that's what they want to do. So you will see after being about maybe 5 or 6 generations in America that your great grandchildren will do the same. They'll be able to decide if they want to become a doctor or if they just want to be a teacher or if they want to be a bus driver, and they don't have that pressure because they don't owe anybody shit anymore.
And since all this information coming out about the real Native Americans and all that, can we not make this Black History Month about Africans? Because for some reason, we be forgetting that Black History Month was designed for Blacks in America and not all those other countries. Child, y'all love to go all the way back to Africa during Black History Month like we don't have Black greatness inside the United States. Y'all be getting real green, yellow, reddish every year in February. And I'm like, how y'all gonna completely wash out the Blacks and go straight to African? It's not African History Month. It's Black History Month. It don't say African American History Month either. It literally says Black History Month. Like, yeah, y'all be pissing me off with that. So this year, can we get it right?
As Black Americans, we need to normalize when people ask us where we're from, we simply say we're from America because that is true. But you know what? Some people are intellectually curious, and so they might say, "Oh, via where?" And you know, they might be trying to build a bond with you. And you can simply say, "I'm multi-generational American. My ancestors came to America via the transatlantic slave trade hundreds of years ago." And I use that all the time, and people literally grasp it immediately. Even if they don't, they know enough not to keep prying and ask. It usually closes the door. Also, I think because this is the global history of so many countries around the world, like Jamaica and Haiti and Barbados and St. Vincent, St. Lucia, I mean, I can go on. But like for some reason, sometimes when Black Americans, because America has such an immigrant history, there's a perception that you are a first and second generation immigrant, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And sometimes people are just simply asking because you remind them of their countrymen, which I think is like a really good compliment. But also, as a Black American, you don't owe anyone a history lesson. Sometimes there is an educational deficit in their home country, or there is somehow an educational deficit, you know, culturally, and they just don't have that history and they don't have that context. Yes, they understand Americanness and they understand
Western culture and they see Black Americans on TV and all these things, but a lot of times they don't have the historical context. And if you feel like it, go off and give them the history lesson. But what I will never do, it's no shade to y'all, what I will never do is look somebody dead in the eye and tell them I don't know where I'm from. Because I know exactly where I'm from. And I'm super proud. It's a super rich history with a super rich like cultural context and diaspora community.
Allow me to share my sentiment before this other African, who is African first, you know, in the Caribbean, like me, speaks. I just want to address my African immigrant sisters and brothers, you know. I want to address you, you know. I want to say this, and I don't know how you're going to take it. African American, Black American in the US are called African American, Black Americans because the US is not colorblind. But they are not second-class citizens. That's one. Let me put it out there. So, whatever special treatment you think that they are having, they deserve it. According to me, they deserve it. It is their land. So, if America is discriminating of foreigners, it's not their problem. It's the US. It's the system they are in. You know. I'm not defending, I don't know if they are oppressing of you, they oppress you in a way, I don't know. But that's my sentiment. And I want to ask you a question. Why is that when you want to send our parent off, we take them to the village? We take them to our ancestral land. Why do we take them to the village? We don't even bury them in town. We don't do that. When you want to send off our parent, we take them to the village to send them off. So how is that you don't acknowledge the fact that since African American ancestors were buried in the American land, they should revere their ancestors and they should take that place as their first identity? Why is that? I think African will understand this better than me, especially Nigerians, especially Kenyans, who, like anyone from West Africa, they will understand this better. Why? So that's my sentiment. I leave it out there. It's for you to bring your conclusion. So why the competition? Why? They're American first before they're African. If they choose to be African, they can even deny it. Because this person here, listen to his story first.
Not where we're from, but where we choose to be that really matters. I know I look black, but I'm not. I'm the son of immigrants. My parents are East African. They come from this little country called Eritrea. I don't like to talk about it because I consider myself American first. And I know a lot of you are not going to like to hear that, but it's true. I was born in America, raised in America. My values are American despite eating ketchup fit every morning. I'm a red-blooded American through and through. And I love this country for what it represents. Not its government, but its people. Its rebellious spirit is what I love the most. The place where you can have a crazy idea and pursue it to your heart's content. You don't need permission from anyone, which is why it's called the land of opportunity. Not because it gives you resources, which it doesn't. Not because there are government support systems, which there aren't. It's the freedom to go do something and the ability to take accountability for it. To succeed or fail, it's all on you. And that's a tough reality to accept. But those who never had the chance see why it's so beautiful. Like my parents, who came to America, who actually met here, who somehow built a life together. My dad tells me stories of the journey and his experiences, and I realize despite whatever I accomplish in life, there will be nothing I could ever do that will be as hard as moving across the ocean to build a new life in a new country, speaking a new language in a new culture. He misses his home. He loves Eritrea, but his choice to come here is the reason why I get to be American. It's not where we're from, but where we choose to be that really matters. I know I look black, but I'm not. I'm the son of immigrants. My parents are East African. They come from this little country called Eritrea. I don't like to talk about it because I consider myself American first. And I know a lot of you are not going to like to hear that, but it's true. I was born in America, raised in America. My values are American despite eating ketchup fit every morning. I'm a red-blooded American through and through. And I love this country for what it represents. Not its government, but its people. Its rebellious spirit is what I love the most. The place where you can have a crazy idea and pursue it to your heart.
As a conscious African, I must push back against this constant display of ignorance by some African people against African Americans. African Americans must know that this is not the sentiment of a majority of African people. The constant disregard and disrespect of African American accomplishments, of their struggle, of their grace, of their excellence, of their fortitude must stop. It is embarrassing, it is heartbreaking. African Americans must know that this is not the truth. If you ever get a chance of visiting the continent, if you've ever visited the continent, you will know that you are loved, you are supported, and you are embraced as a member of this African family, because you are a member of the African family. And this display of ignorance by Africans, especially those Africans who have decided to settle on this soil, on American soil, must understand that it is because of the struggle, it is because of the sacrifices of African Americans that we are able to be here, that we are able to enjoy these things. And so you are exposing your own ignorance speaking this way. Stop it.